Okay, here we go. We're getting ready to take out these girdling roots. And first let's talk a little bit about what girdling roots are. Girdling roots are roots that circle around the edge of the tree, and they cut off the vascular flow of the tree so it can't get water and nutrients, and it'll cause dieback eventually. If we come in close, we can see that that root just literally disappears, or appears to disappear, into the side of the tree. What we see over here is actually the root, and that's why it's so difficult to detect. See this line here? That is actually no longer the root flare of the tree, but just the callus tissue of the root itself from being pushed out by the root flare. So what we're gonna do today is just cut that right there and relieve the tension. I think that will do too much trauma to the root flare if we try to take this out. But we're gonna cut that off there, and we're gonna cut it off back here where it goes into the soil. Now the damage over here is already done. Certainly taking out the root will help that, and it'll mitigate some of that problem over there. But our best chance to help this tree is by taking it out over here. We're not going to let this root continue to girdle this root flare that's coming out here, which in the coming years, as this root flare gets larger and this root gets larger as well, there will become some compression of bark, much like what's happening over here in this area, and the problem with this root will be compounded. So Mike's gonna take out his chisels and his hammer, and we use this little pry bar, and we just carefully remove this root. Now the most important thing to remember when taking out girdling roots, and this here is pretty straightforward, but the most important thing to remember is if we damage the tissue of the tree behind the root while we're taking the root out, then we're back to square one. So when taking out a girdling root, you really do have to slow down and pay attention to what you're doing. Okay, well Mike's chiseled out that root, and as you can see, it's kind of come up a little bit from the root flare. And Mike tugged on a little bit, but just as soon as that root was free, the pressure of that root made it spring right up. So you can imagine the pressure. And if we follow this down, we can see down here where it gets kind of wider and flatter, and that's from all the pressure of being pushed against that root flare. So we're doing a lot of good work here today to mitigate this problem. There you go. Okay, so here we are on the other side of the tree. Mike's exposed the girdling root on this side. We have a smaller one going in this direction. Then over here we see a larger one that's going this way, and it's going over towards a patio. So we have two reasons to take that root out. It's not in a good place, it is girdling, and it could do some damage to that patio. So that's a no-brainer, we're gonna remove those. What we're gonna do is watch Mike take out the smaller one. It should just take a few seconds, few minutes. And then we'll take a little break while Mike begins to work at that bigger root, and we'll show you the final product. There we go. Okay, so we've gotten the large part of the root out, and you can see where it was coming out there. Now Mike just has to clean up that jagged part a little bit so it's nice and smooth and has a nice, smooth, clean, finished product. and we'll clean up our mess and get on to the next adventure. And there we go. So we're getting close to our finished product here. Mike's just putting the finishing touches on it. And you can see here where this old root was and where it smashed against the tree there. So we headed off a problem there. So we did some good work mitigating some girdling roots here today. And this is basically a pretty standard procedure for most trees. I will say that these girdling roots were on top of the soil. Most of the time these girdling roots are below the soil. The reason why we chose to use this as a demo is a lot of times by the time you take away the soil, it takes a qualified eye to be able to tell the difference between the girdling root and the trunk of the tree or the root flare. It's often dirty and there's a lot of compressed wood. So this was a good illustration for us, for the untrained eye, to be able to see exactly what a girdling root looks like.